pause for a moment and breathe slowly, because the fact that you are hearing this message right now is not random. Something deeper than curiosity brought you here. Somewhere inside you, beneath the noise of daily life, there is a quiet knowing that certain moments in time are not ordinary. They are signals, invitations, alignments that arrive precisely when the soul is ready to hear something it could not understand before. And if you feel even the smallest shift in your chest while listening to these words, that is not imagination. That is recognition. Your intuition, sensing that something meaningful is unfolding around you. On March 8th, 2026, a powerful cosmic alignment forms in the sky as Venus meets Saturn in a rare conjunction. In astrology, Venus represents love, attraction, emotional bonds, and the magnetic force that draws souls together across time and circumstance. Saturn represents karma, responsibility, lessons that cannot be avoided, and the deep structure of destiny itself. When these two planetary forces meet, love stops being casual and begins revealing its deeper truth. Under this alignment, emotions are no longer light or temporary. They carry weight, they carry history, they carry consequences. Venus with Saturn often activates the hidden stories of the heart, the connections that never fully ended, the words that were never spoken, the feelings that time tried to bury but never truly erased. For many people, this alignment awakens a realization that certain relationships were never just ordinary chapters in life. They were karmic encounters written into the soul's journey long before two people ever met. Before we go deeper into this message, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. Write the word alignment if you feel that something in your life has been shifting emotionally or spiritually lately. These interactions strengthen the energetic space around messages like this, and they signal to the universe that you are open to understanding the deeper meaning of the signs unfolding around you. Because what this alignment begins to reveal may feel surprisingly personal, as though the universe itself has turned a page in the story of your heart. Before we go deeper, I want to share something I've created for those of you who are ready to truly shift your emotional patterns. My 7-day Emotional Reset Guide audiobook is designed to gently help you release overwhelm, regulate your inner world, and reconnect with your grounded self. Many people don't realize how much emotional clarity can transform their relationships, decisions, and daily peace. The link is in the description and pinned comment. Explore it, and if it resonates with you, implement it in your life. Long before certain people entered your life, your soul may have already known them. Not in the ordinary sense of memory, but in the deeper way consciousness recognizes a familiar vibration. Many spiritual traditions describe relationships as agreements made between souls before incarnating into physical life. These agreements are not always about comfort or easy happiness. Sometimes they are about growth, healing, accountability, and the unfolding of emotional truths that shape who we eventually become. When Venus aligns with Saturn, those invisible agreements can begin to stir again. People often notice that someone from their past suddenly returns to their thoughts without warning. A name appears unexpectedly during a conversation. A song connected to an old memory plays at a strange moment. Dreams become vivid and strangely specific. What once felt finished begins to feel unfinished again. This is the nature of Saturn's influence. Saturn governs karma, which in astrology refers not to punishment, but to unfinished lessons and unresolved emotional exchanges. Saturn is the cosmic teacher that ensures important experiences are not forgotten before their deeper meaning is understood. Some relationships were never meant to disappear quietly into the past. They were meant to evolve through time, sometimes through separation, sometimes through silence, until both people involved grew enough to understand what the connection was truly meant to teach. When Venus and Saturn meet in the sky, the universe often revisits these unfinished emotional contracts and begins asking a powerful question. Was the story actually finished, or was it simply waiting for the right moment to continue? Saturn moves slowly through the sky, and that slow movement reflects the nature of karmic energy itself. Saturn does not rush emotional processes, and it does not chase people toward realization before they are ready. Instead, it allows time to do its quiet work. Experiences accumulate. Lessons unfold. Regret, reflection, and understanding slowly reshape the heart. During a Venus-Saturn conjunction, many people begin feeling a strange emotional gravity, pulling certain memories back into their awareness. It can feel as though something from the past is circling closer again, even if nothing has happened externally yet. There may be moments when you find yourself remembering details you had long forgotten, small conversations, unfinished arguments, or the way a person once looked at you during a moment that felt important but never fully understood at the time. This is karmic gravity at work. Just as planets are pulled toward each other by invisible forces, human connections sometimes remain energetically linked, even after physical distance separates two lives. The emotional imprint of a meaningful relationship can remain stored within the subconscious, waiting for the moment when understanding finally catches up with experience. Under the influence of Venus and Saturn, that gravitational pull becomes stronger. Someone who once chose to walk away may suddenly begin remembering what they left behind. Silence that once felt comfortable may start feeling heavy. Avoided conversations may begin echoing louder in the mind. When Saturn awakens this kind of emotional awareness, it is rarely about nostalgia alone. It is about accountability. The heart begins realizing that certain experiences were never meant to be ignored forever, and that realization can eventually lead someone to reconsider the choices they made in the past. To understand why some people return during this alignment, it helps to understand Saturn's deeper purpose within relationships. Saturn represents maturity, responsibility, and the long-term consequences of emotional decisions. When Saturn interacts with Venus, love becomes a testing ground where people are asked to confront their fears, their limitations, and their willingness to take emotional responsibility for another person's heart. Sometimes two people meet when one of them is not yet ready for the depth of the connection that forms. One person may be open, vulnerable, and prepared for commitment, while the other may still be running from unresolved fears or personal struggles they have not yet faced. In these situations, separation often occurs not because the connection lacked meaning, but because one or both individuals needed time to grow. During the years apart, life begins teaching lessons that could not have been learned within the relationship itself. Experiences bring perspective. Loss brings humility. Reflection brings understanding. Eventually, a realization may begin forming quietly within the person who walked away. They start recognizing that what they once had was not easily replaceable. The connection they dismissed or avoided carried a depth they did not appreciate at the time. What once seemed ordinary now appears rare. This is the moment Saturn often begins activating a deeper level of awareness. The person who left may begin questioning their past decisions, replaying conversations, remembering moments they once overlooked, and wondering whether the story truly ended the way it was meant to. Even when two people are no longer communicating, emotional connections can still ripple through subtle, energetic channels. During strong planetary alignments involving Venus and Saturn, these subtle signals sometimes become noticeable in unusual ways. You might experience unexpected dreams involving someone you have not spoken to in years. Their name may appear during conversations or in places where you would not normally expect to see it. Music connected to shared memories might surface at strangely specific moments. These occurrences can feel coincidental, but many people who study synchronicity believe that such moments are part of a larger pattern of emotional awareness unfolding beneath the surface of daily life. When one person begins processing unresolved emotions, the other person connected to that experience may feel echoes of the same shift. This can manifest as sudden waves of nostalgia, curiosity, or an unexplainable sense that something important is about to happen. Intuition begins stirring in subtle ways. The mind might question these feelings, but the deeper emotional intelligence of the heart often recognizes when an important cycle in life is beginning to move again. Sometimes these signals remain quiet and internal, but sometimes the universe arranges something far more direct, a message, a conversation, or a meeting that seems accidental but carries the unmistakable feeling that timing itself has shifted. When karmic connections begin reactivating under Venus and Saturn, the return rarely begins with dramatic declarations. More often, it starts with something simple and almost ordinary. A message asking how you have been, a comment on a social media post, a chance encounter in a place neither of you expected to be. Yet even these small moments can feel strangely significant, as though something larger is quietly unfolding behind the scenes. Conversations that once felt impossible suddenly become possible again. Words that were never spoken before may begin searching for a way into the open. What makes these encounters powerful is not just the presence of the other person, but the emotional familiarity that still exists between two people who once shared something meaningful. Time may have passed, lives may have changed, yet the emotional atmosphere often carries a sense of unfinished energy. Venus conjunct Saturn does not simply reopen memories. It invites both people involved to confront the deeper truth of what the connection represented. Sometimes the return is about finding closure that was never properly given. Sometimes it is about acknowledging mistakes and offering genuine apologies. And sometimes the return reveals that the connection itself still holds the possibility of continuing in a different, more mature form than it could have before. Yet there is something important to understand about the influence of Saturn within these moments. Saturn does not orchestrate emotional reunions simply for comfort or nostalgia. Saturn's purpose is truth. When this planet becomes involved in matters of the heart, illusions slowly dissolve, and people are asked to face what they genuinely feel beneath the stories they once told themselves. If someone returns during this period, the situation often brings emotions to the surface that have been hidden for a very long time. Questions that were never answered may suddenly demand clarity. Conversations that were once avoided may finally become unavoidable. And in that moment, the real purpose of the karmic return begins revealing itself. It is not only about the person who may reappear from the past. It is also about the person you have become since the last chapter of that story ended. Time changes people. Growth changes expectations. The love you are willing to accept today may not be the same love you once accepted years ago. What once felt confusing may now appear obvious. What once felt irresistible may now be something you see with new understanding. When the past stands in front of you again, the universe is not simply asking whether the story should continue. It is asking something deeper. It is asking whether the lessons carried within that connection have truly been understood. Because sometimes the greatest closure is not the return itself, but the moment when you realize how much your own heart has evolved since the last time that story was written. There are moments in the cosmic rhythm when time itself seems to pause and open a doorway between what was and what could still become. The Venus-Saturn alignment is one of those rare thresholds. It is not merely an astrological event, but a kind of emotional portal where the past, present, and possible future briefly overlap. When this energetic doorway opens, the soul is invited to look honestly at the connections that shaped its journey. Old emotional patterns rise to the surface, not to trap you in memories, but to reveal the truth hidden within them. Many people begin noticing a subtle but undeniable shift during this time. Thoughts return to certain individuals with unusual clarity. Memories that once felt distant suddenly feel vivid again, almost as if they are happening in real time. This is because Saturn governs the deeper architecture of time itself, and when it joins Venus, the timeline of love can bend inward, bringing unresolved chapters back into conscious awareness. In this portal, avoidance becomes difficult. Emotional debts that were postponed begin asking for resolution. The universe quietly rearranges circumstances so that two souls who once shared something meaningful may be placed face to face with the truth of what that connection really was. It is a moment of reckoning not only for them, but for you as well, because this portal is not simply about someone returning. It is about the awakening of your own emotional clarity. Silence often hides more truth than words ever could. In many karmic relationships, the most powerful emotions were never spoken directly. They remained suspended in quiet spaces between conversations, in glances that lasted a moment too long, in choices that were never fully explained. Over time, those unspoken emotions settle deep within the subconscious, where they continue shaping our understanding of love. Under the influence of Venus and Saturn, that silence begins to transform. What once felt buried starts surfacing in the form of realization. Someone who once avoided expressing their feelings may suddenly begin recognizing the depth of what they suppressed. The absence of the connection may start feeling heavier than the vulnerability required to acknowledge it. This realization rarely arrives suddenly. Instead, it unfolds slowly, like a dawn, breaking over a long night. Memories replay with new perspective. Moments that once seemed ordinary reveal hidden meaning. Conversations from the past are understood in ways they were not before. For the person who left, this process can be deeply confronting. Saturn asks them to face not only what they felt, but also what they failed to do with those feelings. The weight of unfinished emotional truth becomes impossible to ignore, and the silence that once protected them begins turning into a call for honesty. Sometimes that call becomes strong enough that the distance between two people no longer feels sustainable. And when that threshold is reached, a message may finally begin forming. Saturn carries a very specific kind of energy. It does not rush toward emotional decisions. Instead, it slowly builds the awareness necessary for a person to recognize the consequences of their past actions. When someone begins realizing that they may have walked away from a meaningful connection too quickly, that awareness can feel heavy. This heaviness is not punishment, it is the emotional gravity of truth. Many people who experience this realization describe it as a quiet but persistent thought that refuses to disappear. They begin wondering how things might have unfolded differently if they had chosen honesty instead of distance, courage instead of avoidance, commitment instead of hesitation. These reflections are not merely nostalgic fantasies. They are Saturn's way of guiding someone toward accountability. The more time passes, the clearer the realization becomes. The person who once left may begin seeing the relationship through a completely different lens. What they once perceived as ordinary may now appear deeply significant. What they once took for granted may now feel irreplaceable. And when the heart finally understands the magnitude of what was lost or left unresolved, a powerful desire to make things right can begin to emerge. That desire is often the first step toward the return of someone who once believed the story had already ended. Every meaningful connection acts as a mirror. Within relationships, we see reflections of our strengths, our fears, our vulnerabilities, and our potential for growth. This is especially true for karmic relationships influenced by Saturn, where two people often trigger deep emotional lessons within each other. When Venus meets Saturn in the sky, that mirror becomes clearer. Each person begins recognizing how the connection changed them. You may realize that the experiences you shared with someone shaped the person you are today in ways you never fully acknowledged before. The challenges you faced together may have awakened resilience, emotional wisdom, or self-respect that you carry forward into every relationship that followed. At the same time, the other person may be experiencing their own reflection. They may begin seeing how their actions affected you and how those choices influenced their own emotional growth. In many cases, this mutual realization creates a kind of energetic alignment where both people begin processing the same connection simultaneously, even if they are physically far apart. It is during these moments that synchronicities often intensify. Dreams become vivid, intuition becomes sharper. The feeling that something important is unfolding begins growing stronger. The universe seems to be quietly reminding both individuals that their shared story still carries meaning. And once two people begin seeing each other clearly again through this mirror of awareness, the possibility of a new chapter begins appearing on the horizon. Life has a mysterious way of bringing certain people back into our orbit at moments when we least expect it. A second crossing of paths rarely happens by accident. Often, it occurs when both individuals have undergone enough personal growth to approach the connection with a different level of maturity than before. When this happens under the influence of Venus and Saturn, the atmosphere surrounding the meeting can feel strangely profound. Conversations may carry a deeper honesty than they once did. Both people may sense that the moment holds emotional significance, even if neither of them can immediately explain why. Sometimes the meeting begins quietly, almost cautiously, as if both individuals are testing the emotional waters of a connection that once felt too intense or complicated to navigate. Yet beneath the surface, something powerful is happening. Old patterns are being examined. Old misunderstandings are being reconsidered. The presence of Saturn encourages patience and responsibility in this process. Instead of rushing into familiar dynamics, both people may find themselves moving slowly, carefully observing what the connection truly means now. The energy is less about impulsive romance and more about genuine understanding. It becomes a moment where two people are no longer meeting as the versions of themselves who once struggled with the relationship. They are meeting as the people they have become since. Every karmic encounter eventually arrives at a moment of choice. This moment does not always appear dramatic on the surface, yet internally it carries enormous significance. It is the point where the lessons of the past intersect with the possibilities of the future. Under Venus and Saturn, that choice revolves around emotional responsibility. Both individuals must decide whether they are willing to approach the connection with honesty, maturity, and accountability. The universe does not force reconciliation, but it does provide an opportunity to transform the meaning of what once happened. For some, the choice may involve forgiveness. Old wounds may be acknowledged and finally released. For others, the choice may involve rebuilding trust slowly over time, allowing a connection that once collapsed under pressure to develop stronger foundations. There are also moments when the choice leads to a different kind of closure. Sometimes the return of someone from the past serves as confirmation that you have grown beyond the version of yourself who once needed that connection. In these cases, the encounter becomes a powerful reminder of how far your journey has taken you. Whatever the outcome, the choice made during this alignment often shifts the timeline of your emotional life in profound ways. Perhaps the most powerful realization during a Venus-Saturn alignment is not simply that someone might return, but that you are no longer the same person who once experienced that relationship. Time, reflection, and personal growth have transformed your understanding of love. You may notice that your perspective has matured. Situations that once felt confusing now appear clear. Boundaries that once seemed impossible to enforce now feel natural and necessary. The emotional wisdom you gained from past experiences has quietly reshaped the way your heart responds to connection. When someone from the past reappears in your life, this evolution becomes impossible to ignore. You see them through new eyes, and you see yourself with new clarity as well. The dynamic between you is no longer frozen in the version that existed years ago. Instead, the encounter becomes a reflection of growth for both souls involved. It becomes a moment where the universe allows you to recognize the strength, awareness, and self-respect you have developed along the way. And in that recognition, something extraordinary begins to unfold within your own spirit. The understanding that the real transformation was never only about the relationship itself, but about the person you became because of it. When someone from the past steps back into your life during a Venus-Saturn alignment, the moment can feel strangely surreal, as if time has folded in on itself. A face you once knew so well suddenly stands before you again, carrying echoes of memories that once shaped your emotional world. Yet beneath the familiarity, there is also something different. Time has moved forward. Experiences have changed both of you. And what once existed between you now stands at a crossroads between past history and present awareness. This kind of return is rarely simple. Saturn does not orchestrate reunions merely to recreate what once existed. Instead, it places both souls in a situation where the truth of the connection must be examined with honesty and maturity. The emotions that surface during these moments can feel intense, sometimes even overwhelming, because they carry the weight of everything that was never resolved before. For the person who left, this return may feel like standing in front of a mirror, reflecting choices they once tried to forget. For you, it may feel like revisiting a chapter of life that once held both deep affection and deep confusion. But within this encounter lies something far more important than nostalgia. It is a test of emotional evolution. The universe is not asking whether the past should repeat itself. It is asking whether both people have grown enough to approach the connection with truth rather than illusion. One of the most powerful transformations that occurs during this alignment is the emergence of honesty. Feelings that were once buried beneath pride, fear, or misunderstanding begin pushing toward the surface. Conversations that once seemed impossible suddenly become necessary. The heart realizes that silence is no longer a safe place to hide. When two people who share a karmic connection finally speak openly, the atmosphere can feel charged with emotional electricity. Words carry weight because they are no longer casual expressions, but confessions of truth that have waited years to be spoken. Regret may appear in the voice of someone who once walked away. Gratitude may surface in the recognition of how deeply a connection once mattered. These conversations are not always easy. They require vulnerability, humility, and the willingness to acknowledge mistakes. Saturn encourages this kind of emotional accountability because it is the only way unresolved karmic energy can truly dissolve. When honesty finally replaces silence, the connection is given an opportunity to transform into something far more authentic than it was before. Even if the path forward remains uncertain, the simple act of speaking the truth can feel liberating. It allows both souls to release the burden of what was left unsaid and step into a space where understanding becomes possible. As these events unfold, something equally important begins awakening within you. You start recognizing the depth of your own emotional growth. The person you are today carries wisdom that did not exist during the earlier chapter of that relationship. You have learned lessons about boundaries, self-respect, and the value of genuine connection. This awakening changes the way you approach the situation entirely. Instead of reacting purely from old emotions, you begin observing the interaction with clarity. You notice the patterns that once shaped the relationship, and you recognize whether they have truly changed or simply returned in a familiar disguise. Saturn's influence empowers this kind of awareness. It encourages you to stand firmly in your own emotional authority. You are no longer the version of yourself who once questioned your worth or wondered whether your feelings were too much for someone else to handle. You understand now that authentic love does not require shrinking your truth. This realization transforms the dynamic of the encounter. The balance of emotional power shifts. You are no longer waiting to be chosen or validated. Instead, you are evaluating whether the connection aligns with the person you have become. Every karmic reunion eventually reaches a moment where the future begins dividing into different possibilities. It is as though the universe briefly pauses the timeline and allows both souls to choose how the story will evolve from this point forward. One path may lead toward reconciliation, where both individuals commit to approaching the relationship with honesty, patience, and emotional maturity. This path requires effort from both sides. Trust must be rebuilt slowly, and old patterns must be consciously replaced with healthier dynamics. Another path may lead toward closure. In this scenario, the return itself becomes the final lesson. Both people gain clarity about what the connection meant, but they also recognize that their journeys are meant to continue separately. Even in these cases, the encounter carries profound value because it releases the lingering question of what if that once lingered in the heart. Whichever direction the timeline moves, the important truth is that the choice now comes from awareness rather than confusion. The emotional fog that once surrounded the relationship begins dissolving, revealing the deeper meaning behind everything that happened. Love stories are often imagined as simple narratives of meeting, falling in love, and living happily ever after. Yet karmic connections rarely follow such predictable patterns. They are complex, layered experiences that unfold across time in ways that challenge and transform the people involved. When Venus meets Saturn, the universe offers a rare opportunity to rewrite the emotional meaning of a connection. The past no longer has to define the future. What once ended in misunderstanding can evolve into wisdom. What once felt like loss can become a catalyst for profound personal growth. If reconciliation becomes possible, the relationship that forms now may look very different from the one that existed before. It will likely move slower, guided by patience and mutual respect, rather than impulsive emotions. Saturn encourages relationships built on stability, responsibility, and long-term commitment. And if the story concludes instead of continuing, that ending can carry a sense of peace rather than regret. Both souls walk away with deeper understanding, knowing that the connection fulfilled its purpose in shaping who they have become. Beyond the personal story between two individuals, this alignment also activates something much larger within your own spiritual path. Every karmic relationship plays a role in awakening parts of your identity that were waiting to emerge. The emotions you experienced, the lessons you learned, and the strength you developed all contribute to the person you are becoming. As Venus and Saturn align, the universe reminds you that love is not only about another person, it is also about the evolution of your own soul. The challenges you faced in the past were not meaningless detours. They were initiations that prepared you for a deeper level of self-awareness. You begin recognizing that your heart carries wisdom now. You understand the difference between attachment and genuine connection. You recognize the importance of emotional responsibility. And most importantly, you trust your intuition in ways you may not have before. This moment becomes an activation of destiny. The universe is showing you how far you have come and how capable you are of creating relationships that reflect your true value. As this cosmic alignment slowly passes, the emotional intensity it created begins settling into clarity. The questions that once haunted the connection find their answers, whether through reconciliation, understanding, or peaceful closure. The karmic loop that once remained open finally begins to close. What remains is a sense of empowerment. You realize that the story was never only about someone returning to your life. It was about the transformation you experienced along the way. Every moment of confusion, every lesson learned, and every emotional breakthrough shaped the person you are now. The universe often revisits the past, not to pull you backward, but to show you how much you have grown. When you look at the connection from this perspective, you can finally see the deeper purpose behind everything that happened. And as the energy of Venus and Saturn moves forward in the sky, your own journey moves forward with it, guided by the wisdom of experience, the strength of self-knowledge, and the quiet confidence that whatever love enters your life next will meet you at the level of truth your soul now understands. Before you leave, take a moment to subscribe to the channel if this message resonated with you, and share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes the stories we carry in our hearts are not meant to remain silent. They are meant to be understood, honored, and transformed into the wisdom that guides our next chapter. And if you feel ready to deepen this inner shift, I've created something to support you. My 7-day Emotional Reset Guide audiobook is a gentle, structured journey to help you clear emotional fog and return to your center. If today's message resonated, you'll likely find real value in it. The link is in the description and pinned comment. Explore it, And if it feels right, begin your reset.